Ultraman Rising is out on Netflix, new animated feature that is based on the existing Ultraman property, which has been made into dozens of movies and cartoons over in Japan. If, like me, you're unfamiliar with it, it's essentially a guy in a superhero suit who can increase his size and fight kaiju, monsters roughly the size of Godzilla. Interestingly though, this film did not start its life as an Ultraman property. Shannon Tyndall originally pitched this film at Cartoon Network in the year 2000, 24 years ago, as an unrelated movie about heroes and monsters in Japan, kind of inspired by Ultraman but not really being Ultraman. And even though the designs and the names were different, the story outline was roughly the same as it is today. The project didn't go anywhere. Then in 2014 it came up again at Sony this time around. The designs of the characters were now closer to what ended up happening, and the Ultraman inspiration started becoming clear. Finally Netflix became interested and they said, hey, why don't we just make it an actual Ultraman movie? And the Japanese right owners agreed, and here we are now. The story starts with a flashback to a young boy named Kenji. He's fascinated with baseball and also with Ultraman, who happens to be his father. He fights monsters to save Tokyo. Then we jump 20 years forward in time to learn Kenji has lived most of that time in the US with his mom, becoming a successful baseball player, while his dad stayed behind, consumed by his superhero life. Now, the mom disappeared somewhere very recently and is presumed dead. Kenji goes back to Japan on his father's request. The old man was injured and he can't fight anymore, so Ken agrees to take up the Ultraman role instead. But as he struggles to juggle his public and secret lives, he suddenly also has to learn the responsibilities of taking care of another being, as a fight against a monster ends up with him giving shelter to an orphaned kaiju baby. So, it's an unexpectedly very good movie. One of the animations which really nail it in terms of being interesting for both kids and adults and having a great message all the while. The younger audiences will enjoy the looks, the colorful effects, the character designs, the humor and the action, whereas the older viewers, such as myself, will probably appreciate the mature themes. Themes of adulthood, of sudden responsibilities being thrust onto someone who is not necessarily prepared for them, of how becoming a parent shifts your perspective when looking at your own parents. It's about learning to be less selfish, learning to make up and let the old wounds heal and perhaps patch things up with a parent that you don't have the greatest relationship with. I think the writing is remarkably well done. I appreciated Kenji's character arc. I loved all the side characters. I appreciated how relatable his strained relationship with his dad is. Because usually when you have daddy issues in film, it's typically the big stuff, like the dad being abusive or an alcoholic or leaving his family or being dead or something, generally pretty serious. In here, it feels much lower stakes. The father clearly never stopped loving and caring for his family. He just had another different priority in life, which he thought was his life mission, and that became a sort of an insurmountable barrier. But now that Kenji is an adult and the circumstances force him to reflect, things become relatively easy to fix, and there's no artificial drama created prolonging the conflict. It ends where it needs to end. I also have to say I loved how the antagonist was handled, and I'm very specifically not using the word villain, because the professor, who is the antagonist, first of all, he's not evil. His goal is to eradicate the kaiju threat permanently for safety of the humans. Secondly, you can see logically how he has a point, because the monsters obviously keep destroying property and lives, but also he's got a personal reason, a personal connection to this. His own family was killed in an attack. So you can understand him and you can sympathize with him, and he's not some cackling evil mastermind. He's kind of a professional guy, but also compassionate at times at some points of the film. Like, there's one very good scene where a henchman comes in to tell him they failed to capture the kaiju baby, and the professor says, it's all right, we're gonna find him next time, and then we're gonna kill all the others. And he notices the henchman's demeanor and asks, do you not agree with my methods? And the henchman kind of says, well, yeah, they can kind of seem a bit extreme, we're not entirely sure. Now at this point in time, in another movie, the professor would surely kill the guy for daring to speak up, but here he just kind of sighs and says, I understand your point of view, but also you still have your family. So go home early today, spend time with them, appreciate them. I don't have that anymore. Wow, what a great way to write your antagonist. Final point about the technical aspects. I really enjoyed the animation style. It looks fairly unique, but like some of the recent brilliant animations, it sometimes blends elements of 3D CGI and traditional 2D hand-drawn animation. Looks great both in action and in the slower scenes, and there are multiple shots that make me go, wow, that is gorgeous. So with this, Netflix is kind of establishing itself, or maybe it already established itself as home for amazing animation all around. If you look at their recent stuff, I mean, Arcane, Castlevania, Nimona, Edgerunners, now this, they have been knocking it out of the park lately. Fingers crossed it stays that way. I liked the film, I thought it was genuinely very good, and despite being a superhero kaiju film, it managed to do something fresh and new and explore interesting, mature themes. I do hope it finds its audience, because the brand might be somewhat niche, especially in the West, and on the surface it doesn't look particularly great, but it's well worth your time.